Al Jazeera, also known as Al Jazeera and JSC, is a Doha-based state-funded broadcaster owned by the Al Jazeera Media Network, which is partly funded by the House of Thani, the ruling family of Qatar. Initially launched as an Arabic news and current affairs satellite TV channel, Al Jazeera has since expanded into a network with several outlets, including the internet and specialty TV channels in multiple languages. Al Jazeera is among the largest news organizations with 80 bureaus around the world. Al Jazeera is owned by the government of Qatar. While Al Jazeera officials have stated that they are editorially independent from the government of Qatar, this assertion has been disputed. The original Al Jazeera channel's willingness to broadcast dissenting views, for example on call-in shows, created controversies in the Arab states of the Persian Gulf. The station gained worldwide attention following the outbreak of war in Afghanistan, when it was the only channel to cover the war live from its office there. Al Jazeera has been called the propaganda outlet for the Qatari government and its foreign policy, by analysts and by news reporters, including former Al Jazeera reporters. The network is sometimes perceived to have mainly Islamist perspectives, promoting the Muslim Brotherhood, and having a pro-Sunni and an anti-Shia bias in its reporting of regional issues. However, Al Jazeera insists it covers all sides of a debate. It says it presents Israel's view, Iran's view, and even aired videos released by Osama bin Laden. Etymology: in Arabic, Al-Ghazara literally means the island. However, it refers here to the Arabian Peninsula, which is Sibh Al-Ghazara Al-Arabia, abbreviated to Al-Ghazara Al-Arabia. History. Launch: Al Jazeera satellite channel, now known as, was launched on 1 November 1996 following the closure of the BBC's Arabic-language television station, a joint venture with Orbit Communications Company. The BBC channel had closed after a year and a half when the Saudi government attempted to suppress information, including a graphic report on executions and prominent dissident views. The Emir of Qatar, Sheikh Hamad bin Khalifa, provided a loan of 500 million Qatari riyals to sustain Al Jazeera through its first 5 years. As Hugh Miles detailed in his book Al Jazeera, the inside story of the Arab news channel that is challenging the West, shares were held by private investors as well as the Qatar government. Al Jazeera's first day on the air was 1 November 1996. It offered 6 hours of programming per day, increased to 12 hours by the end of 1997. It was broadcast to the immediate neighborhood as a terrestrial signal, and on cable, as well as through satellites, although Qatar, like many other Arab countries, barred private individuals from having satellite dishes until 2001. At the time of Al Jazeera's launch, Arabsat was the only satellite broadcasting to the Middle East, and for the first year could only offer Al Jazeera weak C-band transponder that needed a large satellite dish for reception. A more powerful Ku-band transponder became available as a peace offering after its user, Canal France International, accidentally beamed 30 minutes of pornography into a ultra-conservative Saudi Arabia. Al Jazeera was not the first such broadcaster in the Middle East. A number had appeared since the Arabsat satellite, a Saudi Arabia-based venture of 21 Arab governments, took orbit in 1985. The unfolding of Operation Desert Storm on CNN International underscored the power of live television in current events. While other local broadcasters in the region would assiduously avoid material embarrassing to their home governments, Al Jazeera was pitched as an impartial news source and platform for discussing issues relating to the Arab world. In presenting the opinion and the other opinion, it did not take long for Al Jazeera to shock local viewers by presenting Israelis speaking Hebrew on Arab TV for the first time. Lively and far-ranging talk shows, particularly a popular, confrontational one called The Opposite Direction, were a constant source of controversy regarding issues of morality and religion. This prompted a torrent of criticism from the conservative voices among the region's press. It also led to official complaints and censures from neighboring governments. Some jammed Al Jazeera's terrestrial broadcast or expelled its correspondents. In 1999, the Algerian government reportedly cut power to several major cities in order to censor one broadcast. There were also commercial repercussions. Saudi Arabia reportedly pressured advertisers to avoid the channel, to great effect. Al Jazeera was also becoming a favorite sounding board for militant groups such as Hamas and Chechen separatists. Al Jazeera was the only international news network to have correspondents in Iraq during the Operation Desert Fox bombing campaign in 1998. In a precursor of a pattern to follow, its exclusive video clips were highly prized by Western media. Around the clock, the 1st of January 1999 was Al Jazeera's first day of 24-hour broadcasting. Employment had more than tripled in 1 year to 500 employees, and the agency had bureaus at a dozen sites as far as EU and Russia. Its annual budget was estimated at about $25 million at the time. However controversial, Al Jazeera was rapidly becoming one of the most influential news agencies in the whole region. Eager for news beyond the official versions of events, Arabs became dedicated viewers. A 2000 estimate pegged nightly viewership at 35 million, ranking Al Jazeera first in the Arab world, over the Saudi Arabia-sponsored Middle East Broadcasting Centre and London's Arab News Network. There were about 70 satellite or terrestrial channels being broadcast to the Middle East, most of them in Arabic. Al Jazeera launched a free Arabic language website in January 2001. In addition, the TV feed was soon available in United Kingdom for the first time via British Sky Broadcasting. War in Afghanistan. Al Jazeera came to the attention of many in the West during the hunt for Osama bin Laden and the Taliban in Afghanistan after the 11th of September attacks on the United States. It aired videos it received from Osama bin Laden and the Taliban, deeming new footage of the world's most wanted fugitives to be newsworthy. Some criticized the network for giving a voice to terrorists. Al Jazeera's Washington, D.C. bureau chief, Hafiz al-Marazi, compared the situation to that of the Unabomber's messages in the New York Times. The network said it had been given the tapes because it had a large Arab audience. Many other TV networks were eager to acquire the same footage. CNN International had exclusive rights to it for 6 hours before other networks could broadcast, a provision that was broken by the others on at least one controversial occasion. Prime Minister Tony Blair soon appeared on an Al Jazeera talk show on 14 November 2001 to state Britain's case for pursuing the Taliban into Afghanistan. Al Jazeera's prominence rose during the war in Afghanistan because it had opened a bureau in Kabul before the war began. This gave it better access for videotaping events than other networks, which bought Al Jazeera's footage, sometimes for as much as $250,000. The Kabul office was destroyed by United States bombs in 2001. Looking to stay ahead of possible future conflicts, Al Jazeera then opened bureaus in other troubled spots. The network remained dependent on government support in 2002, with a budget of $40 million and ad revenues of about $8 million. It also took in fees for sharing its news feed with other networks. It had an estimated 45 million viewers around the world. Al Jazeera soon had to contend with a new rival, Al Arabia, an offshoot of the Middle East Broadcasting Center, which was set up in nearby Dubai with Saudi financial backing. 2003 Iraq War. Before and during the United States-led invasion of Iraq, where Al Jazeera had a presence since 1997. The network's facilities and footage were again highly sought by international networks. The channel and its website also were seeing unprecedented attention from viewers looking for alternatives to embedded reporting and military press conferences. Al Jazeera moved its sports coverage to a new, separate channel in the 1st of November 2003, allowing for more news and public affairs programming on the original channel. An English-language website had launched earlier in March 2003. The channel had about 1,300 to 1,400 employees, its newsroom editor told the New York Times. There were 23 bureaus around the world and 70 foreign correspondents, with 450 journalists in all. On the 1st of April 2003, a United States plane fired on Al Jazeera's Baghdad bureau, killing reporter Tariq Ayyub. The attack was called a mistake. However, Qatar had supplied the U.S. with a precise map of the location of the bureau in order to spare it from attack. Afshan Rattanzi became the channel's first English-language broadcast journalist after he left the BBC Today programme. After the death of UK government scientist David Kelly, organisation, the original Al Jazeera channel was launched 1 November 1996 by an Emiri decree with a loan of 500 million Qatari riyals from the Emir of Qatar, Sheikh Hamad bin Khalifa. By its funding through loans or grants rather than direct government subsidies, the channel claims to maintain independent editorial policy. The channel began broadcasting in late 1996, with many staff joining from the BBC World Service's Saudi co-owned Arabic-language TV station, which had shut down in 1 April 1996 after 2 years of operation because of censorship demands by the Saudi Arabian government. The Al Jazeera logo is a decorative representation of the network's name written using Arabic calligraphy. It was selected by the station's founder, Emir of Qatar Sheikh Hamad bin Khalifa, as the winning entry in a design competition. Staff Al Jazeera restructured its operations to form a network that contains all their different channels. Wadar Khanfar, the then managing director of the Arabic channel, was appointed as the Director General of Al Jazeera Media Network. He also acted as the managing director of the Arabic channel. Khanfar resigned on 20 September 2011, proclaiming that he had achieved his original goals, and that 8 years was enough time for any leader of an organization. In an interview aired on Al Jazeera English, Ahmed bin Jassim Al Thani replaced Khanfar and served as the Director General of the channel from September 2011 to June 2013 when he was appointed Minister of Economy and Trade. The chairman of the channel is Hamad bin Thama Al Thani. The current Director General is Dr. Mostafa Suag. The editor-in-chief of the Arabic website is Dr. Mustafa Suag, who replaced Ahmed Sheikh. It has more than 100 editorial staff. The managing director of Al Jazeera English is Al Anstey. The editor-in-chief of the English-language site is Mohammed Nanabay, who has run the site since 2009. Previous editors have included Beat Witcher and Russell Merriman. Prominent on-air personalities include Faisal Al-Qasem, host of the talk show The Opposite Direction, Ahmed Mansour, host of the show Without Borders, and Sami Haddad. Its former Iran and Beirut bureau chief was Ghassan bin Jiddo. He became an influential figure on Al Jazeera with his program in Hilwa Mafta, one of the most frequently watched programs. He also interviewed Nasrallah in 2007 and produced a documentary about Hezbollah. Some suggested that he would even replace Wadar Khanfar. However, bin Jiddo resigned from his job after political disagreements with the station. Reach. Many governments in the Middle East deploy state-run media or government censorship to impact local media coverage and public opinion, leading to international objections regarding press freedom and biased media coverage. Some scholars and commentators use the notion of contextual objectivity, which highlights the tension between objectivity and audience appeal, to describe the station's controversial yet popular news approach. Increasingly, Al Jazeera's exclusive interviews and other footage are being rebroadcast in American, British, and other Western media outlets such as CNN and the BBC. In January 2003, the BBC announced that it had signed an agreement with Al Jazeera for sharing facilities and information, including news footage. Al Jazeera's availability throughout the Middle East changed the television landscape of the region. Prior to the arrival of Al Jazeera, many Middle Eastern citizens were unable to watch TV channels other than state-controlled national TV stations. Al Jazeera introduced a level of freedom of speech on TV that was previously unheard of in many of these countries. Al Jazeera presented controversial views regarding the governments of many Arab states on the Persian Gulf, including Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Bahrain and Qatar. It also presented controversial views about Syria's relationship with Lebanon, and the Egyptian judiciary. Critics accused Al Jazeera of sensationalism in order to increase its audience share. Al Jazeera's broadcasts have sometimes resulted in drastic action. For example, when, on the 27th of January 1999, critics of the Algerian government appeared on the channel's live program El Itijar El Muakas, the Algerian government cut the electricity supply to large parts of the capital Algiers, to prevent the program from being seen. At that time, Al Jazeera was not yet generally known in the Western world, but where it was known, opinion was often favorable, and Al Jazeera claimed to be the only politically independent television station in the Middle East. However, it was not until late 2001 that Al Jazeera achieved worldwide recognition, when it broadcast video statements by al-Qaeda leaders. Some observers have argued that Al Jazeera has formidable authority as an opinion maker. Noah Bonzi and Jeb Kugler, for example, writing in the Columbia Journalism Review, argue that the way in which the station covers any future Israeli-Palestinian peace deal could well determine whether or not that deal is actually accepted by the Palestinian public. The channel's tremendous popularity has also, for better or worse, made it a shaper of public opinion. Its coverage often determines what becomes a story and what does not, as well as how Arab viewers think about issues. Whether in Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Jordan, or Syria, the stories highlighted and the criticisms aired by guests on Al Jazeera's news programs have often significantly affected the course of events in the region. In Palestine, the station's influence is particularly strong. The second and third most watched channels, Palestine TV and Al Arabiya, poll a distant 12.8% and 10%, respectively. The result of Al Jazeera's market dominance is that it has itself become a mover and shaker in Palestinian politics, helping to craft public perceptions and influence the debate. This has obvious implications for the peace process. How Al Jazeera covers the deliberations in the outcome of any negotiated agreement with Israel will fundamentally shape how it is viewed, and, more importantly, whether it is accepted by the Palestinian public. Al Jazeera's broad availability in the Arab world, operating with less constraint than almost any other Arab outlet, and remaining the most popular channel in the region, has been perceived as playing a part in the Arab Spring, including the Tunisian and Egyptian revolutions. The New York Times stated in January 2011, "The protests rocking the Arab world this week have one thread uniting them: Al Jazeera, whose aggressive coverage has helped propel insurgent emotions from one capital to the next." The newspaper quoted Mark Lynch, a professor of Middle East Studies at George Washington University. "They did not cause these events. But it's almost impossible to imagine all this happening without Al Jazeera, with Al Jazeera's growing global outreach and influence." Some scholars, including Adel Iskander, have described the station as a transformation of the very definition of alternative media. Al Jazeera presents a new direction in the discourse of global news flow and shows voices underrepresented by traditional mainstream media regardless global imbalances in the flow of information.